Just a quick little introduction here. We have our guest, Richard Suttles, also known as the Fallen Atheist. Yep, give him a round of applause. He's even more handsome in person. How about that? But anyways, he's been a good friend of mine for a couple years. He's known as the Fallen Atheist on Facebook. He was a former Marine, works in counterterrorism. He's an expert on radicalization. We just want to thank him for taking time out to be here today for this event. There's one more round of applause for Mr. Richard, please. And here's my good friend, Eric Hernandez. He won't admit to it in public. I don't blame him. But author of the Lazy Approach to Evangelism. Also a great apologist. He's worked with Texas Baptist. He's got to work with Maven, doing mission trips to Utah. So let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Eric Hernandez. So without further delay, we are just going to get right into it. So I hope you all enjoyed. And at the end, we're going to have a time for you to do a little Q&A. We'll have the 2 microphones out there, so y'all just sit back. So the first question that we got today is going to be to Richard. If morality evolved, why should we treat evolved moral instincts as binding or meaningful?
Okay, yeah, I understand. And is my microphone working? Okay. Okay. So what he's asking is if, in my position, if I'm saying that God didn't direct morality or didn't provide a moral infrastructure for us, then why should we trust our moral instincts? If we evolved like, say, the ants evolved or like the birds evolved, why should we trust whatever evolution got us to? Because evolution is supposed to get us to whatever it takes for us to still be here. So that means it's not necessarily evolving towards truth. It's not necessarily evolving towards goodness. It's just saying, hey, if you're still here, then you're still here. So you could ask, okay, so why trust yourself? You have a moral instinct to do something. Why would you trust it if it's just evolved arbitrarily to just still be here? My answer is that it does sound cold-hearted to say that reality doesn't care that we're still here. Like we're all here in this wonderful church. I was here a few days ago. I'm very pleased with the community here. But reality doesn't care about that. And we're all very nice and we're pleasant to each other, and reality doesn't care. We could do whatever, and reality would be like, oh, I don't care. It's just whether we're still here or not. And that sounds cold-hearted, and it sounds like then we can just do whatever. But I would argue that if you were, say somehow, if you were a student above the cosmos or in another dimension just watching our species, you would say, okay, if they just do whatever they want, they're not going to still be here. They're going to have to develop standards about how they're going to cooperate with each other, how they're going to find meaning, and how they're going to live their lives. If they don't do that, they're not going to still be here. And so we are. So we do have meaning, and we do have moral instincts. I think moral instincts can still lead you to do terrible things, and maybe we can talk about that on another occasion. But we do have moral instincts, and we are still here. And I'm just going to say that we are going to trust those instincts. How much time do we have for this answer?
I started this late, but I can touch on that.
You got 2 more minutes.
Okay. I want to say that if you don't do it, if you don't trust your moral instincts, I'll even say it this way, you're going to. You're going to trust your moral instincts. Hopefully, if you make a terrible choice, then life's going to give you another chance. Your community might give you another chance. Hopefully, you're going to learn from that. And you're going to trust your moral instincts. Because I do think that, biologically speaking, we have our sensation of like a preference or an opinion. You might like this movie better than this, or this ice cream better than this. But when it comes to morals, these are things that get you angry and riled up. When someone violates something that you perceive as a moral ought or a should, you get more riled up. You're not willing to let that violation go. So our biology does give us that distinction. And rather than saying why, like I don't really know why, but I am going to say we're going to. We're going to trust it. And then hopefully we're going to develop a moral system that's more compatible with our society over time, or you're not, and you're not going to get another chance. But while I don't know why we're going to, compulsively I say that we are going to, and that's going to be an important part of my presentation tonight, is that reality doesn't care, and we are going to trust our moral instincts, and we do have a moral system. It doesn't really say why, but it just that I do think we are going to do it.
Okay. Eric, what's your response?
I think the deeper question here is, one, whether or not morality is objective or subjective. Objective morality is something that is going to be right, wrong, good, or bad, independent of what anyone thinks. Whereas subjective is just going to be dependent on the culture, what someone feels, or their preferences, perhaps. And on top of that, is there an objective morality? I'll let Richard speak for his side, or rather his views. I think there definitely is, and that can only make sense if there is a God, a transcendent, eternal, personal being that grounds these objective moralities. But I say that because I think an even deeper question that's being in the background is whether or not we should trust the beliefs our brains produce, if you will, our cognitive faculties. Because if there is no God, then I would say we shouldn't trust any beliefs our brains produce. And so if there's no God, your brain is a byproduct of a natural selection via evolution, which, to use Richard's language, doesn't care about how you feel, nor does it care if whether or not your beliefs are true. So if your brain is producing beliefs that natural selection could care less whether or not they're true, then you now have an undercutting defeater for any belief your brain produces, including the belief there's no God. So if there's no God, you shouldn't trust the belief there's no God, because you don't have a reason to trust the beliefs that your brains are producing. So what I would say is what we're seeing here, the deeper question is, if morality exists, it's going to be objective, and it's a rational enterprise, but rationality requires reliable faculties that we use to reason and think with. And if there's no God, I would say not only is there no objective morality, well, we also don't have reasons to trust whatever morality that evolution may have given us, because if we lived in a different society where slavery was just fine, should we trust what our morality has evolved to? Well, I would say no, and I would say that would also make it subjective. So there has to be something beyond us, transcendent, that grounds objective morality, and I would say that is God.
Awesome. So Eric, here's a question for you. How do we know what God's moral commands are, and how do we distinguish them from human interpretation or cultural influence?
So great question. This gets into what's called the moral argument for God's existence, which I've essentially touched on, that if God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. So that is to say, something is objectively right or wrong, independent of human thought or opinion, and that we have genuinely moral obligations. And note, obligations are owed to persons, not things. So the moral argument is a grounding for the existence of objectivity concerning morality, first and foremost. But then we ask, how do we know what his moral commands are? And I would say, when you look at Scripture, first of all, the Bible says that the moral law is written on our hearts. So God has given us a consciousness, a sense of awareness of right or wrong. And I think it could be summed up in the two greatest commandments. Love the Lord God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So anything that is going to hinder your flourishing or your functionality in light of your fellowship with God, I would say that is going to be something immoral. And you treat other people made in God's image, and thus you should treat them as morally praiseworthy beings or blameworthy beings. You treat them with dignity and respect. And if there is going to be anything that is going to infringe on that is going to go against God's nature and character, I would say that in a real sense alludes to what it means to have the moral law written on our heart.
Richard, what's your response?
So this is important. I think that everyone acts as if morality is objective. So there's 8 billion of us plus. And I think everybody, as I was mentioning before, if you say, hey, what's your favorite movie or your favorite ice cream? We'll say, oh, you're talking about a preference and opinion. That's different. Okay, here's mine. And yours is different? Oh, that's intriguing. Tell me more. I'm not mad about that. But then we perceive morality as objective, and we think, yep, this is absolute, this is different than preferences and opinion. Now you better get this answer right. So if someone gives you the wrong answer, then you get really angry. So we all perceive that. I just don't know if there's a real objective morality. So like an actual objective morality that's outside of us, or just something that we perceive to be. But we do perceive it, and this is where I think atheists get a lot wrong. A lot of atheists say, well, it's, we're just doing the best we can, and Some things are stronger preferences than others. I really think that in many ways we're like an ant colony. If someone steps on the ant colony's ant bed, or if they attack the queen, they stop what they're doing and they come back and they fight for it. They don't care about themselves anymore. Just 100 million ants stop and turn and fight. I think we do something like that. If you violate our morals, if you violate our sacred morals, we just do that. The reason why I worry that it's not really objective, because as he said, I work in counterterrorism, so 31 years now, coming up on 31 years in counterterrorism. I just see so many people who are absolutely certain that the objective moral law is to attack infidels or to attack non-believers or to kill violators. People who don't, the terrorist mindset is people who don't agree with us need to get wiped out. They're not even people, they're germs. They're a disease to get wiped out. And so violence is the correct answer in their minds. They're also arguing for objective morality. Now, I understand that just because they disagree on the way we see objective morality, that doesn't mean there is no objective morality. But what I've come to believe is that it doesn't make a difference. If you objectively, even let's just say there's an objective law that says we have to scream at left-handed people. It's an objective law. You've got to do it. That we're probably not going to all do that. People are going to do what they perceive as an objective ought, even if there is an objective ought. Case in point, we're doing it now. If there really is an objective law for all 8 billion of us to follow, we're all still doing what we want. We're all still doing what we think is the right way to be, and there's no clarifier. No one's coming and saying, no, here's the objective ought in a way that convinces us. We're still going to do what we do. So I understand the perception that there is an objective law. I just don't think that it's a real thing.
It seems then, what is the point of your vocation in anti-terrorism if you were just going to do what they do and there's no objective morality?
Well, it's a competition. So, like our species really is in a competition right now. Are we going to be the kind of people who scream and lash out and dehumanize at those who violate our moral laws, or are we going to try to find a way to collaborate? And hey, when I say collaborate, that doesn't mean if someone says, hey, I'm going to come in here and rob all of you, I'm not going to say, hey, let's meet you halfway. We're going to have to stop him from robbing us. I mean, we're going to have a system that we can all agree on, that we can live together. Are we going to do that or not?
But can I, to clarify and tell us when to go to the next question, essentially though, if there is no objective morality,
right.
It seems like you keep using moral terms, but we should do this to get along. We should, but that's moral terms. But if there's no objective morality, how is there any should?
Well, and I'm saying we perceive it even if there is or even if there isn't. We still perceive it. So I know what you're saying. You're like, okay, but if it doesn't really exist, why appeal? And I'm saying we're going to anyway. That's the kind of species that we are. So I think we should just understand that everyone's going to do that. Even people who say there's no objective morality, he was just talking about Sean McDowell. Josh McDowell, when I was a younger man, I heard Josh McDowell say, if someone denies objective morality, start poking at them and find out what it is that they start screaming about. Everybody has something. You're going to find something that they start screaming about. So there's no exceptions. Even people who deny objective morality perceive it because you find something that they really care about. That's just who we are. So yeah, I'm using moral terms, and I know that doesn't meet your metric, but I'm just saying that's how it's going to be with our species.
Well, I'm saying it goes against your metric. If there's no objective morality, then we shouldn't do anything. It is a matter of preference, it seems, at that point.
No, my metric is that we're going to do it whether there is or not. Because I'm saying if there's an objective moral law that really does exist right now, whether it's what you guys think that God wants or what Muslims think that God wants or Hindus think that a lot of gods want, or what a lot of people think that just the universe wants, even if that does exist, we're still going to do our own moral perceptions, and we're still going to feel righteous. That's just who we are. So I think it does fit with my metric. It's just not a metric that a lot of people like, because they're thinking, no, it's my moral objective thing that I perceive is the moral objective. And I'm just saying that's just how we are.
All right. So here's a question for both of y'all that y'all can give a little time answering. Then I'm going to let y'all cross-examine each other here and ask questions to each other. Is how does your worldview motivate moral behavior, especially when it's inconvenient or costly? Richard, we can start with you in this one if you like.
So, to make sure I understand the question, you mean like
what motivates people in your worldview to, quote, be moral in the first place, even if it may cost them something?
And to defend Tim, he actually wrote these questions out for us a week ago and sent them to us. Eric has reminded me. Okay.
That's what I should do.
Yes, right. Okay. The way that I look at this is that, and this is kind of a long answer, I'm going to try to make it quick. Remember I said that we're all moral creatures. I don't see things as that we have like good and evil battling out inside of us. I think that we feel good and evil, but what I really think is happening is like self-interest. You have self-interest, which is like, this is what I want to do, but you also have a sense of like, I want to cooperate. Even selfish people can have this sense of cooperation, they just don't listen to it a lot. So you have those two, self-interest versus cooperation, and then this third thing that I call zealotry, which is your meaning, your sense of meaning. And meaning and morality are intrinsically tied together because your meaning is how you're coming to perceive morality. And you can make the same argument for meaning. Is it coming from up here or is it coming from within? But we do have that. Again, that's our biology. Self-interest, cooperation, and meaning. So when people think of good and evil, what's happening is, say, like ISIS says, our meaning is that we have to wipe out this church. And for us, that's evil. For them, it's righteous. And again, that doesn't mean there's no righteousness, but in reality, they really think they should. So I don't see us as fighting good versus evil. I see us as we're fighting each other's meaning systems, and we're looking out for ourselves, and we're looking out for each other. Usually when we're looking out for each other, it's within our communities or families. And we're all battling those three systems within us, which is often interpreted as good versus evil. So in my worldview, that's what's going on right now. It's not that God says, here's your list of things you have to do, and you're either doing that or not, and if you're not, you're bad, and if you do, you're good. That's not what I think is happening. I think it's more like these three biological systems in us, and then how do you balance your self-interest with your cooperation, with your meaning? Hopefully your meaning has a lot to do with other people around you and trying to understand other people. And if your meaning system is to wipe out other people, then that's less good. And I'm using the word good.
So Eric, what motivates you, and what do you think motivates morality in your worldview?
So good question. Well, first, the fact that there is meaning and morality, objectively. Richard said that meaning and morality are intrinsically tied together, but in another breath, he'll say there is no objective meaning and morality. So two things that are non-existent are tied together. I don't see what that gets you. So it seems that if there is any motivation, first and foremost, it's because there is a moral obligation. Everyone would rightly so condemn a negligent mother that does not feed her children. Why? Because we know there's a moral obligation to do so. There is something intrinsic within the person. This gets into, if I can use a big word, teleology. It's a way in which we were designed to function and flourish, and it's a way that is going to help us function and flourish based on how we're designed. So to give a quick illustration, if I said that I have a bad iPad or an evil iPad, I'm implying that it is not functioning or flourishing in the way it ought to function and flourish. But note, ought implies that there is a should. So it ought to work a certain way, but it's not. And how do I know how it ought to function? By looking at its design and its designer. Well, now apply this to life. If there is a way we should act, is there a way we should treat each other? That implies there's a proper function. Because if there's an improper function, then there must be a proper function, which implies there is a design plan to the way we ought to function and flourish, which means there must be a designer. So first and foremost, we have a moral obligation to do things, whether it's convenient or costly. We are called to pick up our cross and follow Christ daily, and that means you are to be selfless. Now, what I love is that Richard would agree, yes, we're to be selfless. The difference is, on his view, and I say this as respectfully as I can, and he may even concede this, it's a delusion we tell ourselves to get along. But then whose delusion should we choose to live by? Hitler's? The Holocaust? What delusion? But if there is an objective standard, an objective design to our life, an objective purpose and meaning, then we have a moral duty and obligation to live in the way we were objectively designed to function and flourish. On top of that, if there is an obligation and a moral duty, then that also means we can progress toward a goal, a higher goal that is higher than us. But if there is no God and no objective standard, there's no moral progress. It's all arbitrary, neutral change. So the high school I went to, you had to wear a certain color shirt for the dress code. By my senior year, they changed it and included more colors. Was that moral progress? No. It was just a random, arbitrary system based on the school I attended. So it's not like we cheered for moral progress when they allowed more colors. Well, if you look back in our society, at one point it was legal to own slaves. We no longer allow that. We've abolished that, rightly so. I say that's moral progress, but moral progress implies you are aiming toward a goal beyond yourself, objectively, which cannot exist if there's no God and there's no meaning and no objective purpose. So I would say those few things alone would motivate that there are things we should do because we're designed to function and flourish that way, and we can aim towards something higher than ourselves.
So Richard, I'm going to give you a chance now to cross-examine Eric, ask him some questions about his answer, and you got we're good on time, so go for it.
Okay, like a few minutes?
Yeah, you got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Tear me up.
First of all, I want to say that I really do have an evil iPad because I have tried to get this thing to work for a couple of years, and I have to keep working on it. So I actually think that exists.
Therefore, God exists.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so like you say, I concede that there's morality and meaning and they're tied together, and that I also say that they don't really exist. But do you agree that
Objectively exists.
Right, objectively exists. But do you agree that I'm saying they might objectively exist? Have you ever heard me say
Yes.
I can see? Okay.
Yes.
And so I think a full, clear picture of what my position is that morality and meaning are tied together. They might exist outside of us, independent of human minds, as philosophers like to say. But I'm just saying that even if they do, we're going to chase our own morality and meaning. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. Does that help with what you were thinking about my position?
It at least helps to clarify that, and you're right, you have said that before, and thank you for clarifying, but it seems that we're still back to the should. So you work in an anti-terrorist division,
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like you think that these people shouldn't do these things.
Right, I do.
But then on the other hand, you say, but we don't really know what that is, even if it was there.
Okay.
So how do you know that you're doing the right thing, if you will, if even if there were an objective right, we couldn't know it ourselves?
Right. Okay. And so again, I understand that I'm supposed to be cross-examining, but I kind of want to answer that.
Okay.
I see it as a competition. I really do think our meaning systems, when I talked about our meaning system and zealotry, what I mean is that everyone embraces something that they think is more important than their own selves. So like I say, we have self-interest, cooperation, and meaning. And sometimes when you have your meaning, it's like, this is more important than me. I'm going to give of myself for this. And you can be the most atheist of atheists. It's going to be something. It might not be church. It might be TikTok. But it's something. I'm going to give something of myself for this. And so in that case, you can say selfless, but it's not necessarily a good thing, because what if your meaning system is something horrible? But my ultimate answer is you're going to have people whose meaning systems are to wipe out people that they think are violators or see people as diseases. And then you have people who say, I'm going to try and make it so that we can live more productively than that. I'm going to try and not look at other people as less than human. And again, I don't mean people who are trying to kill you or people who have just given up and are just definitely trying to kill you. I'm talking about people with different views. People who get angry. Are you going to discipline yourself and try to treat them a little bit better than they're treating you to set the standard?
So
That's a competition that we're all fighting. I'm on the side of being more cooperative and not dehumanizing others. I'm just on that side. So that's my bias. Is that objectively correct? I don't know, but I'm going to act as if it is.
So how could we ever claim, on your view, that one moral stance is objectively better or worse than another?
Well, this is where I think biases. I don't think you can get away from your biases. So I would admit, if I was chasing Nazis and they stop and say, wait, before you kill me, what's your objective standard? I'm going to say, bro, I'm still going to kill you because you're a Nazi. So I'm sorry I can't give you a philosophical, metaphysical answer, but you're on the side of dehumanizing and I'm not. So.
But is that wrong?
Well, I'm saying it's a competition, and I'm fighting for the competition over this way. So that's just how I am. It's my bias. I can't say that you have to agree with me because I'm appealing to a higher standard. Just that's where I'm at.
But again, so just to to do the question one more time, could we ever claim that one view is morally better or worse than another, objectively speaking?
I'll say we all are going to do that. When you're thinking about your meaning and your morality, you are going to claim that it's to a higher, even if you're an atheist denying it, you keep poking that guy, he's going to claim it. But that doesn't necessarily make it true. So yeah, we're going to say it with certainty, and if you're smart, you're going to say it with really big words, but that doesn't necessarily make it true.
So then, would you say that we cannot today say, objectively speaking, it was morally wrong to own slaves? You're going to say, well, that's just what I think, and I'm going to fight for that. But you cannot say it's objectively morally wrong universally across the board.
Well, I would just say that I'm on the side. So here's the thing. Let's say you and I are talking about slaves, and I'm like, slavery is wrong. And you're like, yeah, slavery was wrong based because God gave a moral law that all human beings have value and can't be property. And I'm like, well, I'm on the side of slavery is wrong because what a terrible thing. And I don't have anything close to what he said, physically, philosophically or metaphysically, but I'm still saying that it's wrong. Now, what you're asking is like aliens come and say, I don't care about your strong certainties. Show us, demonstrate to us that it's wrong. You're right, I can't demonstrate that it's wrong so that the aliens are happy. But I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to do that. And I don't know the fact that he's going to appeal to God necessarily is going to close the matter for the aliens either. They might say, okay, we've heard you out. You're all going to be our slaves because you can't stop us. So I don't know. I don't know what good it does.
But my point isn't to convince him to not do it.
Yeah.
My point is to say there is an objective moral right and wrong.
Yeah.
God is what grounds that. And as you said, they can still do whatever they want. But my point is, on my view, there is an objective right or wrong whether people agree or not. So if we were to give everyone here a math test, let's look at math. There's going to be some people that might, maybe not this church, it's a sharp church, but in some churches, they will fail the math test. Now, can we look at the math test and say, well, look at how many different answers there are. I guess there's no objectively right answer, or we could never know it. No, of course not. Otherwise, this building wouldn't be here if we couldn't objectively know right and wrong math answers. And I'm saying, I don't see why the same cannot be applied to morality. Now, are there some disagreements where, maybe we need to hash out something? Sure. But to say because there's, and I'm not saying you're saying this, you can clarify, but just because there's a variety of viewpoints doesn't mean there isn't one viewpoint, and you've said that you concede that.
I do.
But it seems that there seem to be clear distinctions when we can say without any doubt slavery is objectively morally wrong, universally, all times, all places, all people. The Holocaust is objectively morally wrong, but what I hear you saying is, well, maybe it is, but I'm still going to fight for it, which doesn't really answer the question because people are going to get math tests wrong. Whether the answers are right or wrong, they're still going to take the math test, but that doesn't answer that more fundamental question on whether or not there is and what grounds it.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. And before I respond, are we going to have like closing statements?
Yeah, I'll give you some time to do a closing statement, then we'll be going to Q&A.
Okay, good, because I had two ways I want to approach with this, and I want to make sure I use one of them, but I'm going to use it for my closing. Because what he's saying right now is really important. In a math test, we talk about this, 2 apples and 2 apples get you 4 apples. So we could have this whole stage filled with Catholics, Muslims, atheists, every worldview in the world could all be up here. And you put a table and you put 2 apples and say, okay, what's going to happen when I add 2 more apples? How many apples are going to be here? It doesn't matter what we say, how long we preach, what books we bring out, how much we pray, preach. When you put the 4 apples in there, count them, we're all going to count to 1, 2, 3, 4. And we always use this phrase, can we count the apples? And if you can count the apples, then everybody has to shut up, because there it is. And there's just a whole bunch in life where we are as certain as we are about the 4 apples, but we're not. For instance, the people who say that if we don't, the Nazis, for instance, they're like, okay, if you're not a Nazi, you don't need to be here. They say that with all the certainty of 4 apples, but they're never going to convince me about the 4 apples because they can't put that kind of thing on the table with 4 apples. So I get what he's saying about math. The thing about math is that it really does work. We wouldn't have air conditioning and we wouldn't have satellites if we couldn't create things that actually change the temperature in a building. We wouldn't be able to communicate with other people on the other side of the world if we couldn't actually put satellites to communicate with themselves and with each other. So math is a real thing and there's real objective answers. And I'm saying that we often think of our worldviews with that same level of certainty, but that doesn't mean that our worldview is as concrete as math and satellites. So I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm saying that even if it turns out, they can prove that God doesn't exist, you and I would still fight against slavery, right? You wouldn't just give up.
Yes, but I think if God didn't exist, nothing would exist. So.
Okay, but if it, like in a weird reality where somehow you wouldn't be like, okay, go have slaves.
I would say there'd be no reason to do that. If I would be logically consistent, well, first again, I'd say that in this world, I don't think it's a possible world. It's like asking me to imagine a married bachelor. But if I were to do this, I would still have to say there is no objectively right or wrong, and I guess then it's just Mike makes right, and whoever's the strongest, the fastest, the biggest, they determine what's right and wrong, and that just seems morally reprehensible. And I know we're talking about math, and I don't think you're accusing me of this, but to clarify, I'm not saying it's a 1-to-1 ratio where as a math formula you plug it in and get this, but I like what you said. You said it works, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you seem to have been saying this whole time, if we have a society where everybody's murdering each other, raping each other, that society would not flourish. So it works, if you will, to get along, treat each other with dignity and respect. Well, that seems as if, hey, it works, and maybe it works because it's true. And if it's true, what grounds this? What is the only thing that can ground something objective? And that's where I point back to, well, it seems like God is the best explanation for these things. So on two levels, to use your language, if it works, that seems to be what's right. Math works, this building is here. We can say society is here. When societies deviate from the moral law God has put in our heart, we see societies crumble. We see societies begin to fall and not flourish. When you line up with what God has designed us to do, we see the opposite, and it works. So I don't see how, in the same way I've used math, we can't say, well, this must seem to say that this is something that is objectively right and wrong.
And it could be that way. It could be that just as with the 4 apples on the table, it could be that morality and meaning is just like that. I'm just saying that because it's hard to demonstrate that, because we can't demonstrate that to ISIS, then we're kind of stuck with the situation where they're going to think the 4 apples point to them, and they're going to say it with just as much certainty, and at that point, it's a competition.
But I think you're missing my point, and that's why I interject. I'm not saying it's not a matter of whether or not we can convince someone.
You're saying whether it is.
Right. So like the world is round.
Right.
But you have a lot of people arguing it's flat.
Yeah.
And if I put 2 apples on the table, I can call some people up who I'm sure would say, well, is the apple really even there? Right? So you have people who have these drastically crazy views, but that doesn't negate the fact that the world is round and that there are in fact 2 apples on the table.
And so I do understand what you're saying. You're saying whether it really is versus how certain we are.
Right.
I'm just saying that we're going to act on our certainty whether it is or not. And because of that, then this competition that I'm speaking of about how you're going to be, are you going to be more like a town like Walnut Grove and Little House on the Prairie, which was my favorite show growing up, or are you going to be like one of these sci-fi towns where everybody's trying to kill each other? It matters which one you push. Again, according to me, now, and I realize I can't say what is, or maybe I will say what is, but whether I say it with certainty or not, you're still going to do what you're going to do.
How do you think we should be?
More like Walnut Grove, 100%. You know, my dad believes what I do, and then his dad, and then his dad. So I'm 4 generations of my family where we don't believe in God, but we do believe in church, and we do think, hey, there's a good way to be. It's just that we're not sure whether it's really based on something. So I'm like the 4th generation of my family to think that. So my dad used to tell me, be like Charles Ingalls, even though I'm not always like Charles Ingalls, and I'm not sure that Charles Ingalls is right. Be like that. Be like that guy. He's like, don't go by me, go by Charles Ingalls. That was a really good advice from my dad.
On your view, can there be moral progress?
Well, yeah. Here, like I was saying before, if you have this self-interest and you have this cooperation and you have this meaning system, if your meaning system is, I'm part of this royal family and all this community should work for me and be my property and I can do with them as I will, that's going to maybe be effective, but it's going to be horrific for a lot of other people. And I do think it's much more, I do think it's a progress if you can do away with these people who think, oh, everyone just has to do whatever I want, and we see ourselves as more equal. And I don't mean that in like a everybody has to be like a communist, because I'm a very big Thomas Sowell guy. If anybody knows who Thomas Sowell is.
But is the answer yes, we can have moral progress?
Yeah, I do.
So then there's an objective moral standard that we're progressing toward.
By my standard, by my belief, by my bias, yes. And then I'm going to say it needs to be this way. And I'm going to be like Thomas Sowell, and I'm going to hold up a conflict of visions and say, you got to read this.
Could people be morally wrong?
Yeah, if you.
So then there's a moral right.
To me. But what I can't prove is that my way of seeing things has to be the way it is, just that I'm going to fight for that.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to give y'all about 5 minutes to do some closing statements.
Okay.
And then I wanted to leave a good amount of time for Q&A for people to come up. And if I can get a couple people, if they can help me real quick, to move the microphones just a little further off from stage real quick. When we get ready for Q&A, that'd be great. And so this time I'm gonna let Eric start with his closing statement here.
Just a few minutes, you said? I'll time myself. So I want to first start by saying I'm thankful for being here. Thank you guys for having us. And I want to thank Richard for this. For those who don't know, Richard's actually a really good friend of mine. I don't mind saying this publicly. I would rather hang out with Richard than some Christians I know. I am perfectly comfortable leaving Richard with my wallet, believe it or not, even though he doesn't know if it's objectively right or wrong to steal it. In fact, Richard is staying at my family's house tonight. He's staying in my home tonight. So he's a good friend of mine. I love him, and I pray that each one of these conversations brings him closer to Christ. Of course, and he knows I've been praying for that. To recap here, the ultimate question is whether or not morality exists and if it's objective or subjective. Setting aside whether or not we can know it, the first question is there objective right or wrong? And I think there is. The second question is, what can ground it? I would argue God, something that's transcendent, eternal, morally perfect, personal, beyond us because we're contingent, we didn't always exist. You cannot ground it in us. We cannot ground it in Richard because when he's gone, is something still right or wrong? Before he was born, was something still right or wrong? If the answer is yes, it cannot be grounded on us, so it has to be something eternal, personal, transcendent. And then on top of that, I want to say it's not a matter of how we came to believe what was right or wrong. The question is, if there is a right or wrong, then there's something that grounds it, namely God. And whether or not we're certain, we should be able to, as a society, look at things and say, this hinders function and flourishing, this doesn't, and there are things that are objectively right and wrong, independent of what human beings think. So far, I haven't heard Richard give a reason as to why, other than skepticism to say we don't know. Whether or not, which is not even a yes or no answer, and he's nodding his head, he's agreeing here, but then why try and answer the question if we can't know it? But if we can know it, and sure, it may make us uncomfortable, that means we cannot live by our own standards, and there is a standard beyond us. But we look to this truth and say, but my goodness, thankfully, it's a God who loves us, a God who knows what suffering is, a God who gave his son for us, a God who offers redemption and forgiveness because we have, all of us, failed to meet a moral standard, and that's him. But because we couldn't go up to meet him, he came down to meet us. And we see on the cross, objectively, something was done wrong to someone who was objectively had done nothing wrong. And I think that even itself, I would say, is evidence that there is a right and wrong. The question is, what grounds it? And if it's God, then let's find out and figure out who he is, and let's align ourselves with him.
Okay. As I let Richard with his closing statement, if you have a question, you can go ahead and start making your way down to either side here. And so, Richard, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you do your closing statement, sir.
Okay, and Eric did his in 3 minutes, so I'm going to do mine in less than 3 minutes. There's a row of young people right over here, and the reason why we backed up the microphones is because I'm scared of them. I've actually had questions from these groups. I've been giving talks to other Christian groups for years now, and these young ladies and men here have been in some of these events, and they've challenged me and freaked me out with how smart they are. So I'm looking forward to your questions. So the thing that I really wanted to say in my closing statement, and I'll say this sometimes when I'm talking to friends and we're arguing about this, I'll say, imagine a community has been wiped out by tornadoes, and a bunch of people just drop what they're doing to go help rebuild the community. And they just say, I just need to do it. And so everyone's there, and we're all helping. We're helping to rebuild. And out of all those people who are helping, some people are saying, the reason we're here is because of my God is saying that's the standard by which we're here. And some people are saying, well, the universe demands that we're here. And some people say, well, you know, I just think we should, and I don't really know why, but I'm here. And all of those people are actually helping to rebuild the community. So my theology, if I could have a theology without knowing whether God really exists, my theology is be there helping to do it. It could be my biases, could be I've been tricked into it, could be I'm delusional, whatever. I want to help rebuild that community. And what I don't want, and I'm certainly not accusing Eric of this, I don't want someone to drop the plywood and say, no, everyone, say my thing or I'm not going to help. I don't want that. So what happens, the way I do it is if someone's helping me carry something and they're like, by the way, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for God, I'm like, okay, cool. Anyway, go ahead, put it over here, go get the hammer. As long as we're doing it, I'm happy. And the only thing I don't want you to do is to not be that way. Let me tell you, most Christians I know are there to help. They do think it's because of God. I've not run into too many Christians that just put their feet down and say, I'm not going to do it, unless you help. The only thing I run into sometimes are people who are so convinced that I have to become a Christian. Sometimes they stop taking care of some of the things they need to take care of, with themselves. But what I'm pushing for is that we're all there trying to help rebuild that community. If you don't have that foundation or not, if you're there, then I'm with you. That's it.
Thank you. So we're going to start with this gentleman right here. Now, clarify, before I forget, question 1. How many? Because I've watched a lot of these things, and people do one question, then it winds up being a sermon later on. So one question, ask your question, then take a seat, let them answer, then we'll go to the next person. Cool?
Thank you both so much for the debate. I learned a lot. But I have a question for Richard, and it's more of a thought experiment. I would like your take on it. So hypothetically, if the Nazis had won World War II, and they conquered the whole entire world, and everybody who disagreed with the eradication of a Jewish populace was then either brainwashed or they were murdered to the point that everybody believed that the eradication of the Jews was a moral act that should keep going on until the Jews were all eradicated. Would the Holocaust then become a rightful act because everyone thought that it was a lawful thing?
Right, so you're asking, in this reality, the Nazis won, and everyone thinks that it is, but is it really? That's your question. Even though all the people of the planet are like, yep, that was right, because everyone at this point you can only be a Nazi to still be here. And you're asking, okay, so they're all convinced, but does that make it right? Is that your question?
Yes, it would be that everybody has come to the conclusion that the eradication of the Jews was the lawful thing.
Disagreement makes something morally right.
Right, and no, it doesn't, because, and remember, I'm saying I'm not sure whether it is or not, but the fact that they all agree is just their agreement. It's just, it's like philosophers will say the difference between epistemology or ontology. Everybody can think whatever they want, but the truth is whatever the truth is. So it wouldn't make it right. It would just be an unfortunate reality.
Thank you so much.
All right. We got a gentleman right over here. We're going to alternate. So
Can I ask what would be unfortunate about that?
But again,
he looks smarter than you. Okay.
hey, real quick, before you ask, Eric was asking me why do I think it would be unfortunate. It's again, I'm saying it could be my bias. It could be that I'm just fooling myself. But as I see it, that would be unfortunate. There was a TV show, and please don't ever watch it or let your kids watch it. It's called Peacemaker. In that season, he goes to an alternate dimension where he's got everything he wants. His dad loves him. His brother, who had died as a kid, was alive. They love him. Everyone in the community loves him. But it's a Nazi-run world. The Nazis had taken over the world in that dimension. Everyone was friendly and loving and happy, but they were extremely Nazi, and he didn't realize that till too late. I think that's a good thought experiment for us. You're right that everyone's convinced, but that doesn't make it right. And because I'm not sure how it is, I can still say what I think, and I think that would be an unfortunate reality.
All right. So go ahead. Ask your question there.
So this is a question for Richard.
Yeah.
So I know you brought evolution
Lean in a
up.
little bit
Speak
more.
into the mic a
I
little
know
bit.
you brought evolution up for a short period of time, so this will be about that.
Okay.
But if morality comes from evolution, and evolution by definition is adaptability to increase survivability,
Yep.
why is it morally good to put your life and decrease your survivability to increase another person's survivability? And I have an example if I'm allowed.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So in 9/11, 412 first responders died. That's 412 people that put their life on the line because they thought it was morally good. How does this line up with the view of morality from evolution or biology?
Okay, so he brings up a good point. Earlier today, Eric said might makes right, and a lot of people think that if evolution is true, then that means whoever's the fiercest and most merciless, those are the ones who are going to survive. And I'm arguing that that's not the case. It's not going to be fierceness and most merciless that survives. It's actually going to be the community. It's going to be the community that has the right mix of that self-interest and cooperation and their meaning system. And their meaning system has to have some content that's good for that community. Hence my Thomas Sowell, my Thomas Sowell reference. The meaning system has to reference the health of that community. So I'm arguing that the only way that we're still going to be here is that we've found that mix, at least to an extent, to still be here, so that we're better than a species that just has to attack each other. And we're better than a species that's like, oh, I'll help whoever you are, I'll just help. Oh, you're going to kill me? I'll help. You can't be too nice. You can't be too mean. You have to have that mix between self-interest and coordination in your meaning system. And that's what evolution built. And it's for the community, not for the individual. Just like the ants.
Can I interrupt just for the sake of time here? And because I don't know if there would be questions for me, so if I can just touch on to your question.
That's important because they aren't here for you.
So how do you avoid speciesism, which is like an unjustified bias toward your own species? What makes the human species better or more preservable or more desirable than any other species? What makes us special?
And I'll give you 1 minute so we can move on to the next.
Okay, and this is another really important, because I was just about to bring up ants, because ants don't give a darn about bees. Ants are about themselves. So I think we can be like that. I think we can be where we're more concerned for ourselves. I think we also have to have something in our meaning system about taking care of the planet that we live on if we're into foundations. But I'm saying we're going to just be like that. So what I was going to say about ants is that they're willing to give up their individual self for the queen and for the colony. And I think to some degree humans can be like that. That's our meaning system. There is something where we drop our self-interest to defend and uphold something that's in our meaning system. And maybe that's speciesist, but that's who we are.
All right. Ken, you've been sitting there for a while. Go ahead and ask your question, sir.
It's for Richard, of course.
Nobody's here for him.
Yeah, the first guy, you touched on this, and I didn't hear you touch on it until that. We believe that God's word, the law of God, creates objective right and wrong. I wasn't sure if you believed that collective agreement created right or wrong until you answered his question, and then you kind of said, I thought you were going to say it does, or it leans toward it at least, but you kind of got away from it and said, no, it really doesn't. But is it just personal opinion, in your opinion, that creates more right and wrong?
No. So, and remember, one of my first things that I said is that everybody makes a distinction between opinion and preference, which is down here, which is fun, intriguing conversations, and morality, which we're like, oh no, don't mess with this. If you do this, I'm going to get mad. No matter what they say, what worldview they say, you poke them, like Josh McDowell said when I was a young man, you poke them, you're going to find out that thing that there's in their meaning system. So it's not just opinion, it's their actual moral certainty that drives them, that gives them meaning.
So do you believe if enough people agree that something is right, that makes it
No.
In fact,
that's what we've been talking about. We've said that even if the whole community, if the whole planet were to think that the Nazis were right, that wouldn't make it right. Okay. It would just be an unfortunate planet where everyone thought that. And so in this case, I wouldn't know if this planet were like that, where everyone agreed on something that awful, and there wasn't something higher above it, then I don't even know how to fathom that. But it wouldn't. Their certainty wouldn't make that moral law something that's binding on the whole universe. It would just be their own certainty. It would be their own, how they see things.
All right, so we'll have to move on to the next question. Trey, you were next.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no, not Trey. The gentleman in the Utah shirt. I apologize.
So you brought up the show Peacemaker, so I'm going to talk about Peacemaker.
Well, let's
in the show Peacemaker, there's a group of people in the Nazi world that fight against the Nazis, and they are labeled as terrorists in that universe.
They are.
And as someone who works in counterterrorism, how does that, I'm just trying to wonder how that correlates in your brain. So if I'm not trying to say that you're a Nazi, but if you were living in the Nazi world and you were a counter-terrorist unit, you would be going against these people that you under your worldview might consider to be objectively right or wrong. I'm just confused about like drawing the lines in between those two. Like, how do you determine yourself what is objectively right, or
How do you know
what
you're
is
not
right
the
and what is wrong?
Right. Yeah. How do you know you're not the terrorist? Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, just like your brother, you guys always give really good questions. So in his world, as I was saying before, the Nazis had won. Everyone's still a family. They're just terribly, terribly Nazi. And these terrorists within that group are trying to win the world back. And Peacemaker, being a counter-terrorist guy, he kills them. And when you see the show, you're like, wow, hey, way to go. And he's celebrating and they're playing uplifting music. And only later, when he realizes what kind of world that he's in, does it hit him all the things that he's done that he now thinks is awful, because he now understands the big picture. Do not watch the show. Do not let your kids watch the show. I can't even tell you how inappropriate it is. But it's fun for this thought experiment. So for 31 years, there have been, I've listened to a lot of groups. When I started with this, the Oklahoma City bombing was my first incident that I had to assess. I've seen all kinds of justifications where people say, in fact, this is why I do this, because I've seen so many people justify their violence with this. This is what we need to do. This is the morally right decision. So this is why I'm in this game. Sometimes one of these guys, he'll come up with an idea that I think is a great idea. So I'm thinking, okay, your idea about the thing that you're fighting for is great. What makes you on the wrong side is that you're trying to kill people. There was one guy who wanted to have this different system for elections. I don't have to get into it. What's that?
I'm going to leave it there just for you.
Okay.
Keep an eye on that.
But my thing with him was, okay, this idea that you have is great, but the fact that you want to blow people up, that's what puts you at odds with me. So it's their methodology. It's not necessarily what they think is important, because I might agree with that, but the fact that they want to blow people up, that's where I jump in as a counterterrorism guy.
So at this time, we got a few more minutes left, so I'm going to ask the people on the pew there. We're going to start with Trey. We're kind of going to start doing a little bit of a rapid fire here.
Okay, we'll do rapid fire.
So, Trey, let me guess, is it for Richard?
Yes, it's for Richard.
Uh-huh.
If everyone argues from a sense of objective morality, even though we disagree on what it is, doesn't that suggest there is some real moral standard we're all reaching toward? One that we recognize not because nothing is objective, but because we instinctively and naturally know some things are.
Yeah, I'll concede that. The fact that everyone thinks that there is something might indicate that there really is something. The thing that bothers me is that if there is that something, they are sure letting us mess things up, and that scares me. And so I say, okay, that might be the case, but we're still going to do what we do. So I think we should consciously try to do what I'm saying, and whether that thing's there or not. But I agree that what you're saying is the fact that we feel like there's something there's something. I can easily agree to that.
All right, we're going to go with the young man with the awesome Captain America shirt. You were up next after Trey there. Yeah, just you'll be all right.
Yeah.
What made you not believe in God?
Okay, so I was raised in a church, and I brought this up when I spoke here a few days ago, so I'll make this very quickly. But I was raised in a church, and I just started having questions, and then the way that my church, and this was back in the 80s, the way that they handled that made me think that they weren't ready for my questions, because it stopped being about my questions, and it started being like, why are you bothering us? And my church did not mean to do that. They thought of me as family. They still think of me as family. I can still go to this church with my kids today, and I do. And we'll sit at the same table that I did in youth group, and I just have my kids, and it's a great experience. But they weren't ready for questions, and so that left the secular world. The secular world was ready for my questions. That's probably. And then again, I have my dad and my grandfather, my great grandfather, who said, "Well, go to church, but that's it." And if I said, "Well, does God exist?" They're like, "It doesn't matter. Go to church." So I think those two things combined together probably helped me to walk away.
Appreciate your question. Lana, I think you were up next.
Oh no.
I'm too
Lana?
short for this mic. Hold up. Okay, so basically, you were saying that morality and meaning is the same thing, but it's opinion, challenged by opinion. And I feel like morality is more given by the grace of God, than meaning is just what you do to cover up the morality. I was just thinking, what are your words on how morality is against meaning, or how meaning is against morality, or if they're just the same thing. Like, how do you like respond to that? How do you say it has meaning that way?
For like how I see meaning and how it corresponds.
Like, how does it make sense to you?
Okay. First of all, when I spoke here the other night, Lana and her sister, they had the hardest questions. And when I walked in and saw them, I was like, I'm going to pull my punches a little bit because they're so young. They're the ones who ripped into me. So when I saw them come down from here, I was suddenly despondent.
Fear of God.
Yeah, yes. And honestly, that's who you all came here for. I said you didn't come here for him. You came here for God. So you got me. So like I said before, I think, in my opinion, it's self-interest, cooperation, and meaning. And this meaning system is something that I think we're born with a sense of, even when you're born and you have no idea what your life is going to be like, even as a baby, I think there's something within you that says later in life you're going to have meaning, and this is going to drive you. This is going to be the reason why you get up and go to work. So I think there's, you could call it like a well, maybe. There's a well that's, something's going to go in here, and that's what I call meaning. And then when you decide to live for that meaning, that's your morality. And you're saying, okay, I'm going to defend and uphold this meaning. And again, I'm hoping it's a good meaning. If it's like you guys, then I'm thrilled. And then if it's like some other communities or groups, then I'm not as thrilled. But I think we're born. How does that happen? I don't know. Why? I don't know. You got me. You guys have a better answer than I do. But I think that it starts with the meaning, and then the morality is the defending and the upholding of that.
Appreciate your question. So these are going to be the last 3 questions. We're going to kind of try to shoot through these real quick. Go ahead, Natalie.
So this one's for Richard. So you were talking about how you believe like morality depends on the person and on what they believe. Like someone could say this is right, someone else could say it's not right. Mm-hmm. So like if that's how you believe it, then how can there be anything that's truly right or wrong? Like how can there be laws that people have today if other people don't believe it?
See, and this bothers me, but it bothers me on a couple of scales, because again, studying terrorists, I've seen terrorists radicalize people starting with that. They'll say, hey, what do you think is right and wrong? And they'll say, well, I think take care of my family and, stay true to my wife and try to be a good person. And they'll say, but what's that based on? And they try to pull that out from underneath them and drag them down. And they'll say, it turns out God has provided you a meaning, and it's to join this group, and it's to do all these awful things. So it bothers me that some people have this moral intuition and that they can be reprogrammed so quickly. That really bothers me. And again, that's based on my meaning system. And like, as you say, had I been born in a different community, could I be much worse than this? Again, that really bothers me. I do think that meaning comes from your surrounding conditions. I do think if we were born in a different community, that we would have a different, at least somewhat different meaning, and that would change your life. Again, it doesn't change the objective truth of meaning and morality, but it would change your life, and that just really bothers me. I don't really have an answer other than I hope you end up more like Charles Ingalls, or in your case, like Caroline Ingalls, than somebody who's not like that.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, sir.
They don't know who Little House on the Prairie is. They should. They ought to.
Many of us have borne witness to the changing of the human heart.
Can you get into the mic?
I said many of us have borne witness to the changing of the human heart.
Okay, yes.
And I've been I was for 23 years, I did counseling, drug and alcohol counseling, mental health treatment, stuff like that. I've never seen anything work like the coming to Jesus Christ.
Okay.
So if you can, both of y'all can give me that one.
I give up on this one too, because there's 8 billion people and 2 billion more are Christians, and in this world, he's right. I'm the same way. When I think of people who were started off one way and then they became more like Charles Ingalls, it was through Christianity. So you've got me on that one. Is that because we're mostly a Christian Western world, supported by the Greeks before them? I don't know, but I'm just happy that it's happened. Or is it because Jesus is real? But I will say this, there's a lot of people who start off with that self-interest. So much of their meaning is in that self-interest, in their own chemicals, dopamine, and they transform into completely different people where they dedicate themselves to meaning. A lot of you in here probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I think I went through that. I just don't think I went through it as a Christian. But most people did go through it as a Christian. So if we're a football game, it would be Christians, billions, and atheists, I don't know, a handful. So
Eric,
you
did you
got that
want
one.
to answer?
Yeah,
some of that?
I can be brief. And before I say that, I just want to say how encouraged I am that there are so many young people asking questions, and that, that speaks a lot. Go ahead, I think it speaks a lot to what you're doing here at this church, and Pastor, the vision that you have for this church. And it's amazing to see young people being able to do that, because one thing that leads people away from the faith is that questions are not allowed, and that's clearly not the case at this church, so thank you for that. I would say if Christianity is true, then we would expect lives to be transformed and have measurable change if Christianity is true and Christ rose from the dead. That just is exactly what we happen to see, so that just fits perfectly on the worldview that Christianity is true, Jesus rose from the dead, and that God loves us.
One last question, then we're going to let Pastor come up and close. So go ahead.
Okay, this is for Richard. If our moral concept comes from our minds, how do we get a mind that understands morals like before we made them?
This is kind of a weird answer that I have. I've talked before about how songbirds, when they grow up, they sing the song of their community, of their surrounding community. But the interesting thing is that when that songbird is born, and they've shown this scientifically, he already has the capacity that there's going to be something like a need to sing that song, even before that biology has actually formed. And so that means when the songbird is born, that song is out there waiting for him. And it's not even a material thing. It's this immaterial realm above the community that is waiting for this bird to get to the right age to start singing that song. So that's just a thing that happens in biology. Now, is that immaterial realm created by earlier ancestors? I don't know. Is it something like ants and birds where they have to feel like they have to have something like a queen or a community or a song? I don't know why that happens, but I think it does happen. And I think, for me, the evidence that it happens is that where you're born, your surrounding conditions has a lot to do with what that meaning system is. So I don't really know why it happens. It could just be a biological thing that I don't understand, but that's what I think happens.
All right, well, thank you all for this time. I'm going to turn over and let Pastor say a few words here.
Well done, and I want to thank you for being here and for sharing in this time. Eric, thanks for coming out and being a part of it. Let's give Eric a hand if we can. And then Richard as well. Great job on his position. Now, what I have to say now, a couple of things. I appreciate what you said about Peacemakers. It's one of my favorite series. I'm joking. I've never seen it.
Thank God.
But I find it interesting that you did forewarn us and in fact said, don't watch it and don't let your kids watch it.
Right.
Either that was on behalf of our moral standard or you actually have a moral standard of your own that came from somewhere. So, okay. Well, good. That had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
By the way, the other thing I will say, and this is home field advantage because this is my church. So, you did say if Jesus did exist, and we know historically
He did.
as a fact, he did exist. So we just, anyway, now, this is where I'm going to get a little touchy, all right? So here's what I'm going to do. Why are you getting up, security? It's good. I preached pretty hard this morning. And I'll get through this just a second. I know that they do this quite often. I think you said 31 years you've been doing this?
For counterterrorism, yes, sir.
Say it again?
31 years in counterterrorism, yes.
Oh, in counterterrorism.
Yes.
How long have you been doing this, the debate?
Maybe 5 years?
5 years?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Grew up, you said you experienced church when you were younger.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. And the reality, based not on my belief system or your belief system or Richard's belief system, but based upon the Word of God that we believe is true and right, hell is real. And the truth of the matter is that if the gospel doesn't transform his life, then hell will be his home for eternity. So this is much more than just a debate. It's our belief that eternity is at stake here. So, home field advantage. Bow your heads if you would, please. And I want you just for the next 30 seconds to do nothing but pray for Richard. Satan has blinded the eyes of them which believe not, lest the glorious gospel should come unto them and shine unto them. And I'm asking you just to pray that God would, in some miraculous and incredible way, reveal himself to Richard. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. Not intended to offend you, but
Not at all.
with all due respect, I don't care if I offend you or not,
I understand that.
because we believe that hell is too real
Of course.
for us to care about that.
Of course.
So, okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. All right. Wow, it's been a good evening, huh? Been insightful. God bless you. Thank you for coming tonight. You're dismissed.